Your financial life has never been about how much money you earn. It has always been about the story you tell yourself about money. Right now, without realizing it, you are probably living inside a story written by someone else. A story that quietly convinces you that wealth is for others, that risk is dangerous, and that playing small is safe. This story is costing you opportunities you do not even see, raises you never ask for, and a future you cannot quite picture. By the end of this audiobook, you will be able to name exactly which mindset has been running your financial decisions, and more importantly, you will know the specific steps to shift it, so that money becomes a tool for your freedom, not a source of your anxiety. Chapter 1. The Invisible Driver. Let us begin with something that might unsettle you. Imagine for a moment that your entire financial life, every decision you have made with money, every moment of relief or shame at the bank screen, every opportunity you seized or let slip, has been governed by something you cannot see. Not the economy, not your salary, not your education, not luck. Something far more intimate, far more personal, and far more in your control than you have ever been told. It is the story you tell yourself about what money is, what it means, and who gets to have it. That story has been running your life whether you knew it existed or not. And here is the truth that changes everything. The single greatest predictor of your financial future is not the number in your bank account today. It is the mindset that looks at that number and decides what to do next. Think about the last time you opened your banking app. What did you feel before you even saw the balance? A flicker of dread? A brief hope? A wave of shame? That feeling, that immediate emotional reaction, is the fingerprint of your money mindset in action. It has nothing to do with the numbers themselves, and everything to do with the invisible driver operating beneath your conscious awareness. For most people, that driver was installed long before they earned their first dollar, installed by parents who spoke about money with tension, by a culture that equated net worth with self-worth, by a childhood of watching bills pile up or seeing money spent with guilt. You did not choose this driver. You inherited it the way you inherited your eye color or your last name. But unlike those things, you can choose to replace it. The poor mindset, and we use that term not as an insult to anyone's current financial situation, but as a description of a way of thinking, treats money as a finite resource to be guarded at all costs. It whispers to you in moments of decision, "You cannot afford that. That is too risky. People like us do not get those opportunities. Save it. You might need it later." Each of these sentences feels reasonable. They feel like common sense, and that is exactly why they are so dangerous. They dress caution up as wisdom and call stagnation safety. When you live inside this mindset, every financial decision is filtered through fear. You see a chance to invest in yourself, a course, a certification, a tool that could double your earning potential, and you freeze. Your stomach tightens. You close the browser window. You tell yourself you are being responsible. And in that moment, the invisible driver has made your choice for you. Not from a place of intelligence, but from a place of fear. Here is a scene you might recognize. You have been working at the same job for 4 years. You know you deserve a raise. Your performance reviews have been glowing. The numbers you have delivered have directly increased the company's revenue. Yet when the annual review arrives and your manager asks if you have any requests, you find yourself saying that you are happy with your current compensation. You mention the good culture. You mention the flexibility. You never say the number you have been calculating late at night. Why? Because deep down, a voice tells you that asking for more is greedy, that you should be grateful for what you have, that you might be fired for being demanding. That is not humility. That is the poor mindset wearing a mask, and it is costing you thousands of dollars a year. Now imagine the alternative. Imagine walking into that same review with a calm, clear request, backed by evidence, spoken without apology. Imagine feeling that you and your employer are partners in a fair exchange, your value for their money, with no shame attached. That is not arrogance. That is a different driver entirely. That is the rich mindset at work. A mindset that sees money as an abundant resource that flows toward value. A mindset that understands that wealth is not a pie to be divided up, but an ocean to be navigated. The poor mindset is not a character flaw. It is not a moral failing. It is a protective mechanism that your brain developed to keep you safe in a world that once felt unpredictable. When you were young, you might have watched your parents argue over bills, or heard the tension in their voices at the dinner table, or noticed that certain conversations about money were always whispered, never spoken aloud. Your brain made a decision in those moments. It decided that money was dangerous, that money was scarce, that money brought stress and conflict, and that decision, made by a small child trying to make sense of the world, has been running your adult financial life ever since. You are not broken. You are simply running outdated software. The rich mindset, by contrast, did not arrive fully formed in the minds of wealthy people. It was learned. It was practiced. It was chosen over and over again, until it became second nature. And the most important thing to understand is that it is not about being greedy. It is not about stepping on other people to get ahead. The rich mindset, at its core, is about expansion. It is about believing that there is enough money, enough opportunity, enough success for everyone, and that your own success does not diminish anyone else's. When you hold this belief, you become generous. You become open. You become willing to share credit, to collaborate, to invest in others, because you know that the tide lifts all boats. This is the mindset that builds businesses, creates jobs, and funds charities. It is not cold or calculating. It is warm and expansive. Let us return to the invisible driver. The term itself deserves a closer look because it explains something crucial about how you make decisions. A driver, in this sense, is a deeply ingrained belief that operates below the level of conscious thought. It is the autopilot of your mind. When you see an opportunity, the driver decides within milliseconds whether you lean in or pull back. When you check your bank balance, the driver decides within milliseconds whether you feel hope or shame. When you consider a financial goal, the driver decides whether that goal feels possible or laughable. You are not controlling these reactions. The driver is. And until you name that driver, until you bring it into the light of your awareness. It will continue to steer your life exactly where it has always gone. Think about the people you admire who have achieved financial peace, not the flashy billionaires you see on social media, but the real people in your life or in your orbit who seem steady, generous, and free around money. Watch them closely. They do not obsess over stock prices. They do not panic at the news. They do not shame themselves for buying something nice. They are not reckless, but they are not terrified either. They make decisions from a place of calm. That calm is the hallmark of a rich mindset. It is not the absence of risk. It is the presence of a driver that understands risk as natural and navigable, not as a threat to survival. The difference between these two mindsets is visible in the smallest daily choices. Consider the morning commute. One person listens to a podcast about how to grow a side business. Another listens to the news and feels anxious about inflation. The first person is not ignoring the world. They are actively building their inner resilience and expanding their financial literacy. The second person is not irresponsible. They are simply being driven by a mindset that defaults to worry. Over a year, that small daily difference accumulates into a canyon. The first person learns 12 new strategies. The second person learns 12 new reasons to worry. Which path leads to wealth? Which path leads to peace? We need to be honest about something uncomfortable. The poor mindset feels safe. It feels right. It feels like the only reasonable response to a world that can be genuinely uncertain. When you grow up with financial instability, your brain develops a hypervigilance around money, a constant scanning for threat that served you well as a child, but now works against you as an adult. You became a master at survival because survival was necessary. But that same skill that kept you safe is now the thing keeping you small. The rich mindset, on the other hand, feels a little dangerous at first. It feels arrogant to ask for more. It feels presumptuous to imagine yourself wealthy. It feels reckless to invest in yourself. That discomfort is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are retraining a brain that has been running the same program for decades. Consider a specific moment. You have an idea for a product, a service, or a creative project that could generate real income. You can picture it clearly. You feel a spark of excitement. Then the driver kicks in. Who do you think you are? That will never work. You do not have the credentials. You need more research first. These are not rational objections. They are the voice of an old story trying to keep you in your place. They are the invisible driver doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you from the terrifying possibility of failure, and in doing so, protect you also from the even more terrifying possibility of success. Because success requires change. Success requires visibility. Success requires you to become someone you have never been before. And that is scary. But here is the truth that breaks the spell. The poor mindset is not protecting you. It is confining you. The fear that it generates is not preventing disaster. It is preventing possibility. When you avoid risk, you also avoid reward. When you stay small, you also stay stuck. The things you are most afraid of, losing money, looking foolish, failing publicly, are actually the very things that, when faced, Build the resilience you need to succeed. The wealthy mindset does not feel less fear. It simply does not let fear make the final decision. It acknowledges the fear, thanks it for trying to keep you safe, and then chooses action anyway. There is a beautiful irony here. The poor mindset is obsessed with money. It thinks about money constantly. It worries about it, counts it, hoards it, and feels its absence. It believes that money is the central problem of life. The rich mindset, paradoxically, thinks about money less. It thinks about value, impact, growth, and contribution. It trusts that when it focuses on these things, money will follow as a byproduct. This is why wealthy people often appear calm about money. They are not cold or detached. They have simply moved their attention away from the number and toward the thing that generates the number. They focus on solving problems, helping people, and building skills, and they let money take care of itself. Let us return to you, sitting in this moment, listening to these words. You already know which driver has been running your financial life. You can feel it. The unease you felt at the beginning of this chapter, the way your chest tightened at the mention of your own money story, the moments of recognition you felt in the scenes described. Those are the footprints of your driver. Do not be ashamed of them. Honor them. Recognize that they kept you safe when you needed protection, but also recognize that you do not need that protection anymore. You are no longer a child in a house of tension. You are an adult with agency, with the power to examine your beliefs and choose new ones. That power is the beginning of everything. As we move through this book, you will learn to name the specific patterns of the poor mindset that have been holding you back. You will see them in your language, your habits, your daily decisions, and more importantly, you will practice the specific rituals and mental shifts that build the rich mindset. This is not abstract philosophy. This is practical daily work. It is the work of catching yourself mid-thought and choosing a different sentence. It is the work of small investments that compound over time. It is the work of patience with yourself as you rewrite a story that took decades to write. The invisible driver has been running your financial life for a long time. It has made its mark in the form of missed opportunities, whispered doubts, and quiet resignations. But now you have seen it. Now you know it exists. And knowing is the first and most powerful step to change. The driver cannot control what you refuse to look at. Once you shine a light on it, once you name it and watch it operate, you begin to take the wheel back. You become the driver of your own financial life, not the passenger. Take a breath. Let this sink in. The driver you inherited is not your identity. It is a habit. A deeply ingrained habit, yes, but a habit nonetheless. And habits can be broken. New habits can be built. The rest of this book is a roadmap for exactly that transformation. You have started the journey by showing up, by listening, by being willing to question the story you have been told. That willingness is the seed of a new financial future, one that is not dictated by fear, but defined by freedom. Chapter 2: The Scarcity Trap. There is a moment that happens to everyone who has ever felt financially trapped. It arrives quietly, often when you are alone, and it sounds something like this. There is never enough. There will never be enough. I am always going to be behind. This is not a thought. It is a state of being. It is a gravitational pull that draws every possibility toward the ground, shrinks every opportunity down to a manageable size, and keeps you focused on what you lack rather than what you have. This state is the scarcity trap, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology because it does not just affect your bank account, it affects your brain itself. Scarcity literally changes how you think, narrowing your focus to immediate survival at the expense of long-term growth, blinding you to the very opportunities that could pull you out of the very situation you fear. Researchers who study poverty and decision-making have found something startling. The experience of scarcity creates a cognitive load so heavy that it effectively reduces your IQ by as much as 13 points. The constant mental effort of managing bills, juggling due dates, and worrying about money leaves your brain with less capacity for everything else. You are not less intelligent when you are financially stressed. You are simply operating under a mental weight that makes clear thinking nearly impossible. This is not a character flaw. It is a biological response to perceived threat. When your brain senses scarcity, it shifts into survival mode. It prioritizes immediate needs. It stops planning for the future, because the future does not feel guaranteed. And in that state, you make decisions that look irrational from the outside, but make perfect sense from the inside. You take the quick cash instead of the long-term investment. You buy the cheaper, lower-quality item because you cannot afford to wait. You pass on a course or a certification because the money feels too painful to part with. Each decision is logical in the moment. Each decision is also a link in a chain that keeps you stuck. Consider a scene that might feel uncomfortably familiar. You are standing in the grocery store, looking at two options. One is a larger package that costs more upfront, but offers better value per unit. The other is smaller, cheaper right now, but you will need to buy it again soon. You know the larger package is the better financial decision. You have done the math before, but your bank account is tight this week, and the smaller number feels safer. So you choose the smaller package, pay a little extra in the long run, and walk away feeling vaguely frustrated with yourself. This is not a failure of discipline. This is the scarcity trap, doing exactly what it was designed to do. It narrows your focus to the immediate moment, makes the smaller number feel like a victory, and prevents you from seeing the long-term cost. The trap is subtle. It feels like prudence. It feels like survival, and it keeps you running in place. The scarcity trap extends far beyond groceries. It influences your career, your relationships, and your sense of self. When you live in scarcity, you compete instead of collaborate. You guard your ideas because you fear someone will steal them. You avoid networking because you assume successful people would not want to talk to you. You work harder, not smarter, because effort feels safer than strategy. You stay in jobs that do not fulfill you because the thought of quitting terrifies you. You say no to opportunities because you cannot see how they could possibly work out. The scarcity trap does not just impoverish your wallet. It impoverishes your imagination. It takes a world full of possibility and reduces it to a small, cramped room where you are always just barely getting by. Let us name the specific mechanisms of this trap so you can recognize them when they surface. The first mechanism is tunnel vision. Scarcity focuses your attention on the most immediate, most urgent need, to the exclusion of everything else. When you are worried about rent, you cannot think about a side business. When you are stressed about a credit card payment, you cannot focus on your long-term career strategy. The urgent always crowds out the important. The second mechanism is mental depletion. Every decision you make under scarcity drains your willpower a little more. By the end of the day, you have no mental energy left to make good choices, so you default to whatever is easiest. You order takeout instead of cooking. You scroll social media instead of learning a new skill. You put off the difficult conversation because you cannot handle one more stress. The third mechanism is self-reinforcing negativity. Scarcity creates a cycle of small failures that confirm your deepest fears. You miss a payment, and it confirms that you are bad with money. You fail to land a client, and it confirms that you are not good enough. Each failure makes the next one more likely, not because you are doomed, but because your belief system has been trained to expect failure. The poor mindset thrives in this environment. It feeds on the scarcity trap, interprets every setback as evidence of permanent inadequacy, and uses that evidence to justify playing small. The voice of the poor mindset sounds reasonable. It says, "See, I knew this would not work. I am just not meant to have that kind of life." It does not sound like a lie. It sounds like the truth. And that is what makes it so dangerous. The scarcity trap does not announce itself as a trap. It announces itself as reality. It wraps itself in the language of common sense and tells you that you are being realistic when you are actually being limited. Now imagine a different response to the same grocery store scenario. Imagine walking past the cheaper option and choosing the larger package because you have trained yourself to think in terms of long-term value. Imagine trusting that the extra money you spend today will save you more in the long run. That is not a small shift. That is a practice of abundance. And it is a practice because it does not come naturally to anyone who has ever felt scarcity. You have to teach yourself to see beyond the immediate. You have to remind yourself that the smaller number is a trick. You have to consciously override the instinct that says, "Spend less now," and replace it with a voice that says, "Spend wisely for the future." This is not easy. It takes repetition. It takes patience. But it is possible, and it is the beginning of leaving the scarcity trap behind. The scarcity trap is also deeply connected to comparison. When you live in scarcity, you measure your life against others, and you always come up short. You see someone else buying a house, and you feel the familiar ache of falling behind. You see a promotion announced on LinkedIn, and you feel a pang of envy. You scroll through social media and see curated images of success, and you feel smaller with each swipe. This comparison is not just unpleasant. It is actively harmful to your financial well-being. It shifts your focus away from your own path and onto someone else's, making you feel like you are losing a race you did not even sign up for. The rich mindset, by contrast, is largely immune to comparison. It understands that everyone is running their own race. It knows that success is not a zero-sum game. It celebrates others' wins because it recognizes that abundance is not limited. But to reach that place, you have to first see the comparison game for what it is, a feature of the scarcity trap, designed to keep you feeling small, inadequate, and forever behind. You might be wondering at this point whether the scarcity trap is entirely internal. It is not. The world is genuinely uncertain. The economy genuinely fluctuates. Jobs are genuinely hard to find. None of this is imaginary. But here is the distinction that matters. The scarcity trap magnifies external uncertainty into internal paralysis. It takes a normal, manageable risk and blows it up into a catastrophic threat. It takes a reasonable caution and turns it into a phobia. The poor mindset sees the same world as the rich mindset, but it interprets it through a lens of fear. The rich mindset sees uncertainty and names it opportunity. The poor mindset sees uncertainty and names it danger. The world does not change. Your interpretation of the world changes. And that interpretation is entirely within your control. Let us look at how the scarcity trap shows up in the workplace. You are in a meeting, and an opportunity arises to lead a new project. It is challenging. It will require skills you are still developing. It will mean working longer hours for a while. The poor mindset in you immediately calculates the downside. What if you fail? What if you look foolish? What if the extra work burns you out? The scarcity trap whispers that you should stay where you are, safe. It tells you that you already have enough on your plate. It insists that the risk is not worth the reward. Meanwhile, the person sitting across from you, the one with the abundance mindset, hears the same opportunity and thinks about the upside. What will they learn? Who will they meet? How will this accelerate their career? They say yes before the fear can catch up. And in that moment, the gap between them widens. Not because one person is smarter or more skilled, because one person is trapped by scarcity and the other is freed by abundance. This pattern repeats itself thousands of times across a career. The scarcity trap says yes to safety and no to growth. The abundance mindset says no to safety and yes to opportunity. Over a decade, the compound effect is staggering. The person who consistently said yes to challenge grew their skills, their network, their income, and their confidence. The person who consistently said no stayed competent, stable, and stuck. The difference was not talent. The difference was mindset, and the mindset was shaped by the ability to recognize and resist the scarcity trap. There is another dimension of the scarcity trap that is even more insidious. It affects your generosity. When you feel scarce, you hold tight to everything you have. You become protective, guarded, and reluctant to share. You avoid giving because giving feels like losing. You avoid helping others because their success feels like a threat to your own. This is not a moral failing. It is a natural consequence of living in a mindset of lack. But it is also a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you hold tight, you close yourself off to the very connections that create opportunity. You block the flow of goodwill, reciprocity, and trust that generate wealth in a social world. People who are generous with their time, their knowledge, and their resources tend to attract more of all three. This is not mystical. It is practical. Generosity builds trust, and trust builds relationships, and relationships build opportunity. The scarcity trap blocks this entire cycle because it convinces you that giving will impoverish you. Let us bring this back to you, in your specific circumstances. Think about the last time you faced a decision that involved risk. Maybe it was a career move. Maybe it was an investment in learning. Maybe it was just the decision to buy a slightly more expensive version of something you needed. What did you feel in your body when you considered the option? Did your chest tighten? Did your stomach clench? Did a voice in your head say, "Better not," or "You cannot afford that," or "What if it does not work out?" Those feelings are the fingerprints of the scarcity trap. They are not rational. They are physiological. They are trained responses that your nervous system has learned over years of practicing caution. And they can be untrained. Not instantly, not by willpower alone, but through the steady, patient practice of choosing differently, again and again, until the new response becomes your default. The scarcity trap will not release its grip in a single moment. It took years to build, and it will take time to dismantle. But every time you notice it, every time you name it, every time you choose abundance instead, you weaken its hold on you. The trap is real. The fear is real. But the decision about whether to live inside the trap or step outside of it is yours. Now that you have seen how scarcity works and how it shapes your decisions, you are ready to explore the mindset that stands on the other side of that fear, the abundance lens that sees a world of possibility rather than a world of limitation. That is the work of the next chapter, where we will move from understanding the trap to actively practicing the alternative. Chapter 3. The Abundance Lens. There is a feeling that comes with abundance that is hard to describe to someone who has never felt it. It is not the feeling of having everything you want. It is something quieter and more fundamental. It is the feeling that there is enough. Enough money, enough opportunity, enough success to go around. Enough room for you to grow without taking from anyone else. Enough time to figure things out. Enough resources to make your dreams real. This feeling does not depend on your bank balance. It depends entirely on your lens, the way you choose to see the world. The abundance lens is not about pretending that challenges do not exist or that money is magically going to appear in your account. It is about seeing the world as fundamentally generous rather than fundamentally hostile. It is about believing that the universe is not conspiring against you and that your success does not come at the expense of others. This belief changes everything because it changes how you act. When you believe there is enough, you become open, curious, and collaborative. When you believe there is not enough, you become closed, defensive, and competitive. The lens you choose determines the life you live. Let us look at how the abundance lens works in a practical, everyday situation. Imagine you are at a networking event, or a conference, or even just a social gathering. You strike up a conversation with someone who seems successful, accomplished, and confident. The scarcity mindset, the one we explored in the previous chapter, would look at this person and feel a twinge of envy. It would compare your achievements to theirs and find you wanting. It would make you defensive, eager to prove yourself, or maybe just quiet and withdrawn. The abundance lens sees the same person and feels curiosity. It wonders what they know, what they have learned, how they got to where they are. It asks questions, listens carefully, and looks for ways to connect and collaborate. The scarcity mindset views successful people as competitors. The abundance lens views them as teachers, collaborators, and potential allies. This is not naivety. It is strategy. People who approach others with genuine curiosity and generosity tend to build networks that create opportunity. People who approach others with defensiveness and envy tend to build walls that keep opportunity out. The abundance lens also transforms how you handle setbacks. When you live in scarcity, a failure feels like confirmation of your worst fears. It feels like proof that you are right to be cautious, that the world is indeed against you, that your situation is hopeless. The scarcity mindset takes a single setback and generalizes it into a life sentence. It says, "See, I told you this would not work. I should never have tried." The abundance lens takes the same setback and sees it differently. It sees a piece of information. It sees a lesson. It sees a stepping stone, not a tombstone. It asks, what can I learn from this? What needs to change? What would I do differently next time? This is not toxic positivity. It is resilience. The abundance lens does not deny the pain of failure. It simply refuses to let that pain define the entire future. It holds the failure in one hand and the possibility of growth in the other. And it does not let the failure overwhelm the possibility. Consider a specific moment that might sound familiar. You have been working on a project for months. It could be a side business, a creative endeavor, a proposal for a promotion, anything that required real effort and real hope. And it does not work out. The client says no. The proposal is rejected. The business idea fizzles. You feel the familiar drop in your chest, the sinking feeling that you have wasted your time, that you were foolish to try. The scarcity mindset would stop here. It would sit in the disappointment and let it harden into a belief that you are not cut out for this. The abundance lens, practiced and patient, would acknowledge the disappointment fully, sit with it for a moment, and then ask a different set of questions. What did you learn about your craft? What did you learn about the market? What connections did you make along the way? Who noticed your effort? These questions do not erase the disappointment, but they prevent it from becoming a conclusion. They keep the door open for the next attempt, and the next, and the next. Because the abundance lens understands that success rarely comes on the first try. It comes to people who keep showing up, keep learning, and keep believing that the next attempt might be the one that works. The abundance lens has a profound effect on your relationships, both personal and professional. When you believe there is enough, you are not threatened by someone else's success. You can celebrate their wins genuinely, without the faint taste of envy that spoils the celebration. You can recommend them for opportunities, share their work, introduce them to influential people, because you know that their success does not diminish your own. In fact, you know that their success can lift you up. People remember those who help them. They reciprocate generosity. They open doors for the people who open doors for them. The abundance lens creates a virtuous cycle of support and connection that the scarcity mindset can never access because it is too busy guarding its own small territory. Let us talk about money specifically. The abundance lens does not treat money as a scarce resource to be hoarded. It treats money as a tool, a medium of exchange, a way of channeling value from one place to another. When you see money this way, you become less attached to it. You become willing to spend it on things that create value, like education, tools, or experiences that expand your capabilities. You become willing to give it away, to donate, to tip generously, to help others. Because you know that giving does not deplete you. It circulates. It creates goodwill. It builds a reputation that attracts more opportunity. The scarcity mindset looks at money as a finite pile that shrinks every time you spend. The abundance lens looks at money as a flow that grows every time you invest it wisely. One lens sees a static number. The other sees dynamic energy. This difference plays out in the most mundane decisions. Imagine you receive a modest windfall, an extra few $100s you were not expecting. The scarcity mindset immediately wants to save it, to put it away for a rainy day, to treat it as a buffer against future disaster. The abundance lens considers the same money and asks, what is the highest leverage use of this money right now? Maybe it is a course that could double your earning potential. Maybe it is a piece of equipment that could save you hours of work every week. Maybe it is a gift to someone who has helped you, a gesture that deepens your relationship and builds trust. The scarcity mindset sees the money as a safety net. The abundance lens sees it as fuel for growth. Neither approach is inherently wrong, but over time, the abundance lens compounds its advantages. Every dollar invested in growth generates more dollars. Every dollar spent on relationships generates more opportunities. Every dollar merely saved loses value to inflation and does nothing to expand your life. The abundance lens also changes how you think about your own worth. Scarcity tells you that your value is fixed, that you have a certain level of talent and intelligence, and that you are either good enough or not. Abundance tells you that your value is expandable, that you can grow your skills, your knowledge, your network, and your contribution. This is a critical distinction because it determines whether you invest in yourself or not. When you believe your value is fixed, you do not see the point of learning new skills or taking on new challenges. You stay in your lane, do your job, and hope for the best. When you believe your value is expandable, you actively seek out growth. You take courses, read books, practice new techniques, and seek feedback. You treat your own development as the most important investment you can make because you understand that your earning potential is not capped by your current situation, but by your willingness to grow. Let us return to the lens metaphor for a moment. A lens does not change reality. It changes how you perceive reality. The abundance lens does not make the world easier. It does not make money appear out of thin air. It does not protect you from failure or hardship. What it does is shift your attention. It trains your brain to notice opportunities instead of obstacles. It trains your brain to see possibilities instead of threats. And over time, that shift in attention changes what you act on. And what you act on changes what you attract. This is not magic. It is neuroscience. Your brain has a limited attention capacity. and it will focus on whatever you tell it to focus on. If you tell it to look for danger, it will find danger everywhere. If you tell it to look for opportunity, it will start finding opportunity in places you never noticed before. The abundance lens is simply a practice of directing your attention toward the abundant aspects of life until they become more visible to you than the scarce ones. You might be thinking that this all sounds very idealistic. You might be thinking about your own financial situation, the bills that need to be paid, the debt that weighs on you, the uncertainty of your job. You might be thinking that abundance is a luxury for people who already have enough, and that your reality is too tight for such philosophical concerns. This is a fair objection, and it deserves a direct answer. The abundance lens is not a luxury. It is a necessity, especially when resources are tight. When you are struggling, your brain is already hyper-focused on scarcity, which narrows your thinking and makes it harder to find solutions. The abundance lens is the antidote to that narrowing. It opens your mind to options you would otherwise miss. It helps you see creative ways to earn more, spend less, and invest in yourself, even on a limited budget. The abundance lens is not about pretending the struggle does not exist. It is about refusing to let the struggle become the only thing you can see. It is about preserving your imagination and your hope, even when circumstances are difficult. There is a practical exercise you can begin right now to strengthen your abundance lens. Every day, for the next week, write down 3 things that went well financially. They do not need to be big. They could be a small saving, a tip you received, a compliment from a colleague, a new idea that came to you. The point is not to prove that your finances are perfect. The point is to train your brain to notice positive financial signals, to develop the habit of seeing abundance, even in small doses. This is a simple practice, but it is powerful because it rewires your attention. Over time, your brain becomes more adept at spotting opportunities, more attuned to the flow of value, and more confident in its own ability to create abundance. This is not a cure-all. It is a foundation. It is the daily practice that builds the lens through which you will see your entire financial life. The abundance lens also has an important social dimension. When you believe there is enough, you are more likely to help others succeed. You share knowledge, make introductions, offer encouragement, and celebrate their wins. This generosity is not self-sacrificing. It is self-expanding. Every person you help becomes part of your network, part of your community, part of the ecosystem that supports you. The most successful people in any field are almost always generous with their time and knowledge. They know that abundance multiplies when it is shared. They know that the tide lifts all boats. They know that helping others succeed does not reduce their own success. It amplifies it. The scarcity mindset cannot see this. It sees a zero-sum game. It sees every success as a threat. And in doing so, it closes itself off from the very relationships that create wealth. Now, consider where you stand at this moment. You have been listening to this book, and you have already covered significant ground. You have seen the invisible driver that has been running your financial life. You have named the scarcity trap and recognized its mechanisms. And now you have begun to look through a different lens, one that sees possibility, growth, and connection. This is progress. Real progress. Not because you have changed your bank account yet, but because you have changed the way you see your bank account. And that shift in seeing is the foundation for every financial change that follows. The abundance lens is not a destination. It is a practice. You will not wake up tomorrow and suddenly see everything through abundance-colored glasses. You will have moments of scarcity thinking. You will feel fear and doubt. You will still worry about money sometimes. The difference is that now you know what is happening. You can recognize the old lens when it clicks back into place. You can name it, pause, and choose to look again. You can ask yourself, is there another way to see this? Is there an opportunity here I am missing? Is there a generous response I could make instead of a fearful one? Each time you ask these questions, you strengthen the abundance lens. Each time you choose the generous response, you weaken the grip of scarcity. This is the work. It is not easy, but it is simple. And it is the work that changes lives. The journey from scarcity to abundance is not a single leap. It is a series of small steps, a daily practice of choosing the larger story over the smaller one. You have already taken the first steps by being here, by listening, by staying open. The next step is to carry this lens with you into the world, to practice it in your decisions, and to let it guide you toward the financial peace you deserve. Chapter 4. The Story You Inherited. Before you could speak, before you could count, before you could understand what money even was, your brain was already learning how to feel about it. You were absorbing the emotional atmosphere around money in your home, your neighborhood, your culture, and your family. You were hearing the tone of voice your parents used when they talked about bills. You were noticing the tension in their shoulders when they checked the mail. You were feeling the silence that fell over the dinner table when the topic of finances arose. You were internalizing the messages they never said out loud, the ones that lived in the sighs and the worried glances and the whispered conversations behind closed doors. These moments, many of which you do not consciously remember, formed the foundation of your money story. They built the narrative that has been running your financial life ever since. And the most important thing to understand is this: that story was never yours. You inherited it. You did not choose it. And you have the power to choose a different one. Let us trace the roots of this inherited story. Every family has a money narrative, a set of beliefs and attitudes about wealth that gets passed down through generations like an heirloom. Some families teach that money is the root of all evil, that wealthy people are greedy and corrupt, and that being good and being rich are mutually exclusive. Some families teach that money is scarce, that you must work endlessly just to survive, and that financial security is a privilege reserved for others. Some families teach that money is private, that it should never be discussed, that asking for a raise or negotiating a salary is gauche and uncomfortable. Other families teach that money is a tool, that wealth is a natural reward for hard work and smart decisions, and that financial literacy is a basic life skill. The family you grew up in taught you one of these narratives, whether you realized it or not. And that narrative became the filter through which you see every financial decision you make. Here is a scene you might recognize. You are considering a job offer in a new city. The pay is significantly higher than what you are making now, and the opportunity for growth is clear. But there is a voice in your head, a voice that sounds suspiciously like your mother or your father, telling you that you should stay where you are, that the new city is too far from family, that the higher salary is not worth the risk, that you are being ungrateful for what you already have. This voice is not rational. It is inherited. It is the voice of a family narrative that prioritizes safety over growth, familiarity over opportunity, and gratitude over ambition. You have been hearing that voice for so long that you mistake it for your own. You think you are being careful when you are actually being confined. You think you are being wise when you are actually being afraid. The story you inherited is speaking through you, and it is shaping your life in ways you have barely begun to notice. Consider another example. You have an opportunity to invest in something that could grow significantly over time. It might be a stock, a piece of real estate, or a business venture. The numbers make sense. The research is solid, but a deeper part of you resists. It tells you that you cannot afford to lose money. It tells you that people like you do not take risks like that. It tells you that investing is for people who already have money, not for people who are still building. This voice is also inherited. It is the voice of generations who learned that money was dangerous, that the safest path was the one that required the least risk, and that financial security was about holding tight to what you have, rather than reaching for what you could have. This inherited caution may have served your grandparents in a different era. It may have protected your parents in difficult circumstances, but it is not serving you now, and it is not protecting you. It is holding you back. The inheritance of a money story is not always obvious. It is not always spoken aloud. Often, it is the absence of conversation that does the most damage. When money is never discussed, when children are never taught about budgeting, saving, investing, or earning, they grow up with a massive gap in their knowledge. They learn to be uncomfortable with money. They learn to avoid thinking about it. They learn to treat financial decisions as mysterious and intimidating, something that wise people handle and ordinary people struggle with. This avoidance is itself an inheritance. It is the legacy of families who were too anxious, too ashamed, or too uneducated about money to pass on practical wisdom. And it leaves the next generation fumbling in the dark, trying to figure out something that should have been taught in childhood. Let us look at the cultural dimension of the inherited money story. The culture you grew up in also shapes how you think about wealth. If you grew up in a culture that emphasizes community and collective well-being, you might feel guilty about pursuing financial success. You might feel that wealth is selfish, that you are abandoning your community by rising above it. If you grew up in a culture that emphasizes individual achievement, you might feel that money is the primary measure of success, that your worth is tied to your income, and that you are a failure if you are not constantly advancing. Both of these stories have their roots in cultural inheritance, and both of them can distort your relationship with money. The first can make you shrink from opportunity. The second can make you chase status at the expense of meaning. Neither is a complete or healthy view. Both are inherited, and both can be examined and revised. The inherited money story also includes beliefs about who gets to be wealthy. If you grew up around people who struggled financially, you may have internalized the belief that wealth is for other people. People with different educations, people with different family backgrounds, people with different connections. You might have concluded that the game is rigged, that the deck is stacked against you, and that effort alone will never be enough. This belief, understandable as it may be, is also an inheritance. It is the story of those who came before you, and it is a story that can keep you trapped. The truth is more complicated. The game is not fair. Some people do start with advantages, but the belief that wealth is impossible for you is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you do not believe it is possible, you will not take the actions that make it possible. You will not seek the education, take the risks, or persist through the setbacks. Your inheritance becomes your ceiling, not because it is true, but because you believe it is true. Now, let us talk about the moment when you realize that the story you inherited is not the story you want to live. This realization often comes with a mix of emotions. Relief, because you finally understand why certain patterns have repeated in your life. Grief, because you recognize how much this story has cost you. Anger, because you see how deeply you were shaped by forces you did not choose. All of these emotions are valid. All of them are part of the process of reclaiming your financial narrative. The key is not to stay in any of them too long. The key is to move from recognition to action, from understanding the inheritance to rewriting the will. Rewriting your inherited money story begins with a simple question. Is this belief mine, or is it someone else's? When you feel fear about a financial decision, ask yourself where that fear comes from. Is it based on your own experience and knowledge, or is it the echo of something you heard long ago? When you feel guilt about earning more, ask yourself, who taught you that guilt? When you feel shame about where you are financially, ask yourself whose standards you are measuring yourself against. These questions are not easy to answer. They require honesty and self-reflection, but they are essential because they separate what you have inherited from what you actually believe. Once you have made that separation, you can begin to choose. There is a particular inheritance that deserves special attention. The belief that money is scarce and that there is never enough. This belief is so pervasive, so deeply embedded in the culture of many families, that it feels like objective reality. It is not. It is a story that may have been true in a previous generation, in a time of war, or depression, or poverty, a story that may have been necessary for survival. But it is not universal truth, and it is not inevitable. The belief in scarcity is a lens that can be changed, just as the belief in abundance can be cultivated. The first step to changing it is recognizing that it is a belief, not a fact. The second step is actively choosing to replace it with a belief that serves you better. Let us look at what happens when you begin to rewrite your inheritance. You start making decisions that would have terrified your younger self. You invest in a course that costs more than you would normally spend. You ask for a raise with confidence instead of apology. You say yes to an opportunity that stretches your skills and your comfort zone. You stop comparing yourself to others and start running your own race. These changes do not happen overnight. They happen one decision at a time. one conversation at a time, one moment of courage at a time. And each time you choose differently, you weaken the grip of the old story and strengthen the new one. You are not erasing your inheritance. You are building something on top of it. You are honoring the survival instincts of your ancestors while creating a future that reflects your own values and aspirations. It is important to acknowledge that rewriting your money story is not a solitary act. It is a process that often involves difficult conversations with family members, with partners, with friends who share your financial life. These conversations can be uncomfortable. They can surface old wounds and long-held resentments, but they are also necessary. When you change your relationship with money, you change your relationships with the people who share your financial world. You may need to explain your new priorities, set new boundaries, and ask for support in ways you never have before. This is hard work, but it is part of the transformation. You are not just changing your own story. You are changing the story of your family line, and that is a profound and valuable thing. As you move through this process, you will encounter resistance. It may come from inside you, in the form of old fears and doubts. It may come from outside you, in the form of people who are uncomfortable with your growth. This resistance is normal. It is the inevitable friction of change. The important thing is not to avoid it, but to recognize it for what it is. The old story fighting to stay in control. Every time you feel that resistance, you have a choice. You can let it stop you, or you can acknowledge it and move forward anyway. Moving forward is how you build the new story. Moving forward is how you prove to yourself that you are no longer bound by the limitations of your inheritance. This chapter has asked you to look closely at the story you inherited about money. It has asked you to name the voices that have been guiding your decisions, to separate what belongs to you from what was passed down to you, and to begin the process of choosing a new narrative. This is not easy work. It is deep work. It is the kind of work that changes the course of a life. But you are ready for it. You have already shown that by staying with this book, by being willing to examine your own mind, by taking the time to understand what has been running your financial life, the next step is to take that understanding and turn it into action, to begin the conscious, deliberate process of rewriting your financial story for good. Chapter 5. Rewriting the Script. You have spent the first chapters of this book examining the architecture of your financial mind. You have seen the invisible driver. You have felt the weight of the scarcity trap. You have looked through the abundance lens. You have traced the inherited story that has been running your decisions. Now comes the moment where all of that understanding transforms into action. This is where you take the pen from the hands of the past and begin to write a new narrative for yourself. Rewriting your money script is not a one-time event. It is a practice, a daily discipline of catching the old story in the act and replacing it with a new one. It is the work of retraining your brain to think differently about money. And it is the most important work you can do, because every financial decision you make flows from the story you believe about yourself and your relationship with wealth. The first step in rewriting your script is learning to catch the old narrative when it surfaces. This is harder than it sounds because the old narrative does not announce itself as a story. It announces itself as truth. It is the voice that says, "You cannot afford that," when what it really means is, "I am afraid to spend." It is the voice that says, "That will never work for someone like me," when what it really means is, "I do not believe I deserve success." It is the voice that says, "I should be grateful for what I have," when what it really means is, "I am too scared to ask for more." These voices are so familiar that you may not even notice them. They are the background noise of your financial life. The first step to rewriting is simply noticing. Noticing when the old story speaks. Noticing the feeling that accompanies it. Noticing the decision it pushes you toward. This noticing is the beginning of freedom, because you cannot change what you do not see. Let us imagine a practical example. You are considering buying a course that costs a few $100s. It is a course that could teach you a skill that would significantly increase your earning potential. The old story speaks immediately. It says, "That is too expensive. You cannot justify that expense. What if it does not work? You should save that money for something more certain." This voice feels rational. It feels like prudence. But notice the fear underneath it. Notice the assumption that learning will not pay off. Notice the belief that you cannot trust yourself to make a good investment. Now pause, take a breath, and ask yourself a different question. What if this course pays for itself 10 times over? What if the skill I learn opens doors I cannot even see yet? What if the cost is not an expense, but an investment in my own future? This is not blind optimism. It is a deliberate shift in the story you tell yourself. The old story says, "This is money lost." The new story says, "This is money spent on growth." The facts have not changed. The price is the same. The course is the same. But the story you tell yourself about the decision changes everything. Rewriting your script also involves changing the language you use around money. The words you speak aloud and the words you say to yourself shape your reality. If you constantly say, "I am terrible with money," you reinforce that belief with every repetition. If you say, "I never have enough," you train your brain to focus on lack. If you say, "Money is stressful," you create a relationship with money that is defined by anxiety. The new script requires new language. Instead of saying, "I am terrible with money," you can say, "I am learning to manage money better every day." Instead of saying, "I never have enough," you can say, "I am building my financial resources steadily." Instead of saying, "Money is stressful," you can say, "Money is a tool that I am learning to use with confidence." These are not empty affirmations. They are conscious choices about the narrative you tell yourself. And over time, the narrative you tell yourself becomes the reality you live. There is a powerful technique for rewriting your script that involves writing down the old story and then writing a new version next to it. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write the beliefs you inherited about money. Write them as honestly as you can. Money is scarce. Rich people are greedy. I do not deserve to be wealthy. Asking for more is selfish. On the right side, write a new belief that directly challenges each one. Money flows to those who create value. Wealth can be earned with integrity. I deserve to build financial security for myself and my family. Asking for fair compensation is a sign of self-respect. This exercise is not about pretending the old beliefs do not exist. It is about bringing them into the light and consciously choosing a replacement. You are not erasing the old script. You are building a new one alongside it, and over time, the new one will become the dominant voice. Let us talk about what happens when you begin to practice this new script in real life. You will encounter moments of dissonance, moments where the old story and the new story clash. You will feel the fear of the old script even as you speak the words of the new one. This is normal. This is the process of change. The important thing is not to wait until you feel completely comfortable with the new script. The important thing is to act as if you already believe it. When you act as if you already believe you are capable of financial growth, you start making decisions that reflect that belief. You take the course. You ask for the raise. You make the investment. And when those actions lead to positive results, the new belief is reinforced. You begin to accumulate evidence that supports the new script, and that evidence, built over time, makes the new script feel more real than the old one. Consider the emotional dimension of rewriting your script. The old story is not just a set of beliefs. It is a set of feelings: fear, shame, guilt, anxiety, hopelessness. These feelings are deeply embedded in your nervous system. They surface whenever you face a financial decision. Rewriting your script means also learning to regulate these emotions, to feel them without being controlled by them. When the fear arises, you can acknowledge it. You can say to yourself, "I am feeling fear right now. This is the old story trying to keep me safe. I am grateful for its protection, but I do not need it anymore. I am going to make this decision from a place of courage, not from a place of fear." This is not about suppressing your emotions. It is about acknowledging them and choosing your actions anyway. It is about building the muscle of acting in alignment with your new story, even when your emotions are still lagging behind. There is a subtle but important distinction to make here. Rewriting your script is not about becoming reckless. It is not about ignoring real risks or making foolish financial decisions. It is about distinguishing between legitimate caution and inherited fear. Legitimate caution is based on facts, research, and a clear-eyed assessment of the situation. Inherited fear is based on old beliefs that may have nothing to do with your current reality. The practice of rewriting your script helps you make this distinction. It helps you ask the right questions. Is this fear based on my own experience and knowledge, or is it the echo of something I learned long ago? Am I making this decision from a place of strength or from a place of avoidance? What would I do if I were not afraid? These questions are the tools of the new script. Let us return to the course example. You have decided to invest in yourself, to take the course that could change your career. The old story is still whispering its doubts, but you have made your decision based on a new narrative. You have chosen to believe that you are capable of growth, that you are worth investing in, that the cost will pay for itself many times over. Now comes the follow-through. You take the course. You engage with the material. You apply what you learn. You start seeing small wins. Maybe a new client, a promotion, a raise. Each win reinforces the new story. You start to believe it more deeply. and eventually, the new story becomes your default. You no longer have to consciously choose it. It has become part of who you are. This is the process of rewriting your script. It is not intellectual. It is experiential. It is built through action, reflection, and repeated practice. Rewriting your script also means forgiving yourself for the past. The old story may have led you to make decisions you regret. You may have missed opportunities, stayed in jobs too long, avoided necessary risks. It is natural to feel regret when you look back at those choices. But regret is only useful if it leads to change. If you stay in regret, you are simply reinforcing the old story. The new script says, I made the best decisions I could with the beliefs I had at the time. Now I have different beliefs, and I will make different decisions going forward. This is a shift from guilt to learning, from shame to growth. It is a shift that allows you to move forward without the weight of the past dragging you down. You may also need to address the practical side of rewriting your script. This includes building new financial habits that support your new story. Every time you check your accounts calmly, every time you make a budget decision from a place of intention, you are acting in alignment with your new script. And each action strengthens the belief that you are, in fact, someone who manages money wisely. Rewriting your script also involves surrounding yourself with people who support your new narrative. The people you spend time with influence your beliefs more than you realize. If you are around people who constantly complain about money, who see themselves as victims of circumstance, who believe that wealth is unattainable, you will absorb those beliefs. It is not about abandoning people who are struggling. It is about seeking out relationships that model the mindset you want to cultivate. It is about finding mentors, peers, and communities that reinforce your new story. These relationships provide evidence that the new script is not just theoretical. They show you that other people are living it. They give you permission to believe it is possible for you too. This chapter has covered a lot of ground. You have learned how to catch the old narrative in the act, how to consciously choose new language, how to practice new beliefs through action, and how to build habits and relationships that support your new story. This is the work of transformation. It is ongoing. It is daily. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it, because the story you believe about money determines the life you are able to build. You have the power to rewrite your script. You have already begun. The next chapter will take you into the territory of risk and reward, helping you navigate the fear of loss and the joy of possibility. Chapter 6. Risk and Reward. There is a word that stops more people from building wealth than any other. It is a small word, only 4 letters, but it carries the weight of generations of caution, fear, and inherited limitation. That word is risk. For the poor mindset, risk is a warning sign. It is a red flag that means stop, turn back, stay safe. For the rich mindset, risk is something else entirely. It is a necessary ingredient in the recipe for growth, a bridge between where you are and where you want to be. The difference is not that wealthy people are reckless or that they enjoy gambling with their futures. The difference is that they have learned to distinguish between blind risk and calculated risk, and they have learned to take the second while avoiding the first. This distinction is one of the most important skills you can develop, because the path to financial freedom is paved with decisions that involve some degree of uncertainty. You cannot avoid risk and grow. You cannot play it completely safe and build wealth. You must learn to navigate risk with intelligence, courage, and self-awareness. Let us define what we mean by risk in this context. Risk is not about betting your entire life savings on a lottery ticket. That is not risk. That is foolishness. Risk is about making a decision where the outcome is uncertain, but the potential reward is meaningful. It is about investing in yourself when you cannot guarantee a return. It is about starting a business when you cannot predict the future. It is about leaving a stable job for an opportunity that could change your life. These are the kinds of risks that separate those who build wealth from those who dream about it. The poor mindset looks at these situations and sees only the downside. It sees the possibility of failure, loss, embarrassment, and regret. The rich mindset looks at the same situations and sees the upside. It sees the possibility of growth, learning, expansion, and breakthrough. Both perspectives are valid. Both are based on a reading of the same facts. The difference is which perspective you choose to act on. Consider a specific moment that might feel familiar. You have been working in a job that pays the bills but does not fulfill you. You have an idea for a side business, something you could build in your spare time. It would require some investment, maybe a few $100s for a website, some materials, or a course to learn a new skill. The poor mindset immediately calculates the risk. What if the business fails? What if you waste the money? What if you look foolish? What if you spend all that time and energy and have nothing to show for it? These are real possibilities. They are not imaginary. But the rich mindset calculates a different equation. What if the business succeeds? What if you learn valuable skills, even if it does not? What if the experience teaches you something that applies to your next venture? What if the act of trying, regardless of the outcome, builds your confidence and your capacity for growth? Both equations are rational. Both are based on the same facts. The choice of which equation to focus on is the choice of which mindset to live from. The concept of calculated risk is central to this discussion. A calculated risk is not a gamble. It is a decision made after careful assessment of the potential costs and benefits. It involves research, planning, and a clear-eyed view of what could go wrong and what could go right. The rich mindset does not avoid risk. It manages risk. It asks questions before acting. What is the worst that could happen? Can I survive that outcome? What is the most likely outcome? What is the best possible outcome? What is the probability of each? These questions transform risk from something terrifying into something manageable. They turn uncertainty into a series of known variables. They allow you to make decisions with your eyes open, not with your eyes closed and your fingers crossed. Let us look at a practical example of calculated risk in action. You are considering leaving your job to start your own business. The poor mindset says, "This is too risky." You have a steady paycheck. You have benefits. You have security. Do not throw that away. The rich mindset says, "Let us examine the risk carefully. How much savings do you have? How long could you survive without income? What is the minimum revenue you would need to cover your basic expenses? What are the steps you would take to reduce the risk, like starting the business part-time while keeping your job? What is the upside if it works? What is the learning if it does not? These are not reckless questions. They are prudent questions. They acknowledge the risk and then take steps to understand and mitigate it. This is how wealthy people think about risk, not by ignoring it, but by engaging with it intelligently. There is a psychological dimension to risk that is worth exploring. The fear of risk is often not about the money. It is about identity. It is about what it would mean if you tried something and failed. The poor mindset is terrified of failure because failure feels like confirmation of a deep-seated belief that you are not capable, not worthy, not the kind of person who succeeds. The rich mindset has a different relationship with failure. It sees failure as data. It sees failure as a necessary part of the learning process. It sees failure as a stepping stone, not a stopping point. This difference in perspective is transformative. When you are not afraid of failure, you are free to take intelligent risks. You are free to try things that might not work. You are free to learn from what does not work and apply those lessons to what might work next time. The fear of failure is one of the greatest barriers to financial growth, and overcoming it is one of the most liberating things you can do. Let us talk about the relationship between risk and reward. They are not separate. They are two sides of the same coin. The potential for reward is directly proportional to the level of risk. If there is no risk, there is usually no reward. The salary of a secure job is predictable. It is also limited. The potential of a business venture is unpredictable. It is also unlimited. The poor mindset looks at the secure job and feels safe. The rich mindset looks at the business venture and feels potential. Neither is wrong, but one leads to a life of steady limitations, and the other leads to a life of possibility. The choice is about what you want for your future. Do you want a life that is safe and predictable, or do you want a life that is expansive and full of potential? There is no right answer to this question. There is only the answer that aligns with your values and your vision for your life. Now, let us address a common misconception. Many people believe that wealthy people take big risks with big money. This is not accurate. Wealthy people tend to take calculated risks with money they can afford to lose. They do not put everything on one bet. They diversify. They hedge. They protect their downside while positioning for their upside. This is not about being risk-averse. It is about being risk-intelligent. It is about understanding that risk is not a single event, but a portfolio of decisions. Some risks will pay off. Some will not. The goal is not to avoid all losses, but to ensure that the wins outweigh the losses over time. This is the mathematics of wealth building. It is not about being right every time. It is about being right often enough and managing your mistakes well enough to come out ahead. Let us return to the side business example. You have decided to take the risk. You invest the money and the time. You build the website, learn the skills, and launch the business. And it does not work as well as you hoped. The sales are slow. The profit is minimal. The poor mindset would declare this a failure. The rich mindset would call it a learning experience. You have learned about marketing, customer behavior, pricing, and product development. You have built skills that apply to your next venture. You have connected with people who might become customers or collaborators in the future. You have proven to yourself that you can start something from scratch. These are not failures. These are assets. They are the invisible capital you accumulate on the journey to success. And they are only invisible to the poor mindset. The rich mindset sees them clearly and values them highly. There is also the risk of not taking risk. This is a risk that is rarely discussed, but is perhaps the most costly of all. When you avoid risk, you avoid growth. You stay in jobs that do not fulfill you because you are afraid to leave. You avoid starting the business because you are afraid to fail. You avoid investing in yourself because you are afraid to waste the money. The cost of these avoided risks is not zero. It is the cost of a life that is smaller than it could have been. It is the cost of opportunities never taken, skills never learned, connections never made, and wealth never built. This is a real cost, and it is often higher than the cost of any risk you might take. The poor mindset does not see this cost because it is invisible. It is the cost of staying the same. The rich mindset sees it clearly and chooses to take the risks that lead to growth. Let us talk about how to start taking calculated risks in your own life. The first step is to practice on small risks. You do not need to quit your job tomorrow. You can start with a small investment in yourself, a course, or a book that could expand your skills. You can start a small side project that does not require a huge commitment. You can have a conversation with your manager about a new responsibility. These are low-stakes risks that build your risk-taking muscle. Each time you take one, you learn something. You learn that the outcome is rarely as catastrophic as you feared. You learn that you are more capable than you thought. You learn that uncertainty is not the end of the world. These small wins build the confidence you need to take larger risks later. The second step is to reframe how you think about failure. Instead of seeing failure as a verdict on your worth, see it as feedback on your strategy. If something did not work, ask why. What can you learn? What can you change? What would you do differently next time? This reframing is essential because it removes the emotional charge from failure. It turns failure from something to be avoided into something to be studied. And when you are not afraid of failure, you are free to experiment, to try new things, to innovate. This is how people build wealth. They experiment, learn, adapt, and try again. They do not get it right the first time. They get it right over time. The third step is to build a support system. Taking risks is easier when you have people who believe in you. Find mentors, peers, and communities that encourage your growth. Surround yourself with people who have taken risks themselves and who can offer guidance and perspective. These relationships provide a safety net, not a financial one, but an emotional one. They remind you that you are not alone. They remind you that failure is not the end. They remind you that you are capable of more than you think. This support system is one of the most valuable assets you can build because it gives you the courage to take risks that you would not take on your own. This chapter has explored the relationship between risk and reward, the difference between blind risk and calculated risk, and the psychological barriers that keep people from taking the risks that lead to growth. You have learned that risk is not something to be avoided, but something to be managed. You have learned that the fear of failure is often greater than the actual cost of failure. And you have learned that the cost of not taking risk is a life that is smaller than it could have been. The next chapter will explore a resource that is even more valuable than money, time, and how the rich and poor mindsets treat this precious resource differently. Chapter 7. The Wealth of Time. There is a resource that is more valuable than money, more precious than gold, and more finite than any other asset you will ever possess. It is time. You cannot earn more of it. You cannot save it for later. You cannot borrow it from someone else. Every single person on this planet receives the same 24 hours each day, and what you do with those hours determines everything about your life. The poor mindset treats time as if it is infinite, as if there is always tomorrow, as if the hours can be wasted without consequence. The rich mindset treats time as the ultimate currency, understanding that every hour spent is an investment, and that the way you spend your time shapes the way you build your wealth. This difference in perspective is one of the most profound distinctions between the two mindsets, and it is one of the most practical to change. Let us begin with a simple observation. The poor mindset trades time for money. It sells hours in exchange for a wage, and it measures its value by the number of hours worked. The rich mindset trades money for time. It understands that time is the only resource that cannot be replenished, and it actively seeks ways to buy back its own time by spending money on things that free up hours for more valuable pursuits. This is not about being lazy or avoiding work. It is about recognizing that not all work is created equal, and that the highest leverage use of your time is often the thing that requires you to stop doing everything else. When you spend money to outsource a task that someone else can do, you are not wasting money. You are buying time, and time, invested wisely, can generate far more value than the money you spent to acquire it. Consider a scenario that might feel familiar. You spend your evenings doing tasks that could be done by someone else for a fraction of your hourly rate. You clean your house, you do your laundry, you run errands, you maintain your car. These are necessary tasks, but they are not tasks that require your unique skills and talents. The poor mindset says, I cannot afford to pay someone else to do these things. I have to do them myself to save money. The rich mindset says, if I can pay someone else to do these tasks, I can use that time to work on something that generates far more value than the cost of the service. This is not about being wasteful. It is about being strategic. It is about understanding that your time has a value and that spending it on low-value tasks is a form of hidden poverty. It sees only the money leaving the account. It feels the sting of the expense. It does not calculate the value of the time gained because it has never been taught to think of time as a resource with a measurable value. This is one of the most costly blind spots in personal finance, and it is one of the most important to correct. Your time is not free. It has a value, and that value is determined by what you could be doing with it instead. When you spend time on low-value tasks, you are spending a resource that could be generating wealth. You are trading your future for your present, and that is a trade that rarely works in your favor. Let us look at another dimension of time and wealth. The poor mindset tends to think in terms of the present moment. It focuses on immediate needs, immediate gratification, and immediate relief from discomfort. The rich mindset thinks in terms of compound time. It understands that small investments of time today can generate enormous returns in the future. It is willing to delay gratification, to put in the work now for a payoff that may not come for years. This is not about sacrifice. It is about strategy. Poor mindset delays. It says, "I will start next year when I have more money." The rich mindset starts now, even with a small amount, because it understands that time is the irreplaceable ingredient in the recipe for wealth. This principle applies not just to money, but to skills, relationships, and personal growth. The person who spends 20 minutes a day learning a new skill will, over the course of a year, have invested more than 100 hours in their own development. Over 5 years, that is more than 500 hours. That is enough time to become genuinely proficient in almost any field. The poor mindset says, "I do not have time to learn new skills. I am too busy working." The rich mindset says, "I will make time because my future self depends on it." The difference is not about the amount of time available. The difference is about the priority placed on time. Everyone has the same 24 hours. It is how you choose to spend them that determines your trajectory. There is a concept in productivity that is relevant here. The idea of the time value of money. Your time has a value, and that value is not fixed. It can increase over time as your skills, experience, and network grow. The poor mindset treats time as a fixed commodity. It sells its time at a rate determined by others and accepts that rate as the limit of its potential. The rich mindset sees time as a variable that can be increased. It invests in skills that raise its hourly rate. It builds systems that multiply its effectiveness. It creates leverage that allows it to earn more in less time. This is not about working harder. It is about working smarter, and it is about understanding that the value of your time is not determined by the market, but by your own investment in yourself. Let us talk about how the poor mindset wastes time. It is not always obvious. It is often disguised as necessary activity. Checking email, scrolling social media, watching the news, having long conversations about nothing in particular, doing tasks that could be automated or delegated. These activities feel productive. They feel like you are doing something. But they are often just busy work, filling the hours without creating any real value. The rich mindset is ruthless about protecting its time. It limits distractions. It prioritizes high-value activities. It says no to things that do not align with its goals. It is not that rich people are always working. It is that when they work on things that matter. And when they rest intentionally, knowing that rest is also an investment in their ability to perform. There is a powerful question you can ask yourself to shift your relationship with time. Is this the best use of my time right now? This question cuts through the fog of busyness and forces you to evaluate whether what you are doing is actually moving you toward your goals. If the answer is no, you have a choice. You can stop. You can delegate. You can postpone. You can refocus. The poor mindset does not ask this question. It moves through the day on autopilot, doing what feels urgent rather than what is important. The rich mindset asks this question constantly, and it acts on the answers. This is not about being obsessive or anxious. It is about being intentional with the one resource you cannot replace. Let us address the emotional dimension of time. The poor mindset often feels like there is never enough time. It feels rushed, overwhelmed, and behind. This feeling is not a reflection of objective reality. It is a reflection of the mindset that treats time as something that happens to you, rather than something you manage. The rich mindset feels a sense of spaciousness. It does not have more hours in the day. It has simply learned to use its hours more effectively, to prioritize what matters, and to let go of what does not. This sense of spaciousness is not a luxury. It is a skill. It is the skill of saying no to the non-essential so that you can say yes to what truly matters. And it is a skill that can be learned and practiced. Let us think about the long-term horizon of the rich mindset. It plans in terms of decades, not days. It invests in its health, its relationships, and its skills, knowing that these investments will pay off over the long haul. It does not expect instant gratification. It does not need immediate results. It trusts the process of compound growth, knowing that small, consistent investments of time will eventually produce extraordinary returns. This patience is one of the defining characteristics of the rich mindset, and it is one of the things that sets it apart from the poor mindset, which demands results now and loses patience when they do not appear. This chapter has explored the relationship between time and wealth, the difference between trading time for money and trading money for time, and the power of compound growth over long time horizons. You have learned that time is your most valuable resource, that its value can be increased through investment, and that the way you spend your time determines the trajectory of your life. You have also learned that the rich mindset is patient, strategic, and protective of its time, while the poor mindset treats time as an infinite, low-value commodity. The next chapter will explore how to use money as a tool for expansion rather than a scorecard for your worth, shifting your relationship with wealth from external validation to internal freedom. Chapter 8. Money as a tool, not a scorecard. There is a moment that happens in the life of almost everyone who has ever chased wealth. It comes quietly, often in a moment of solitude, when you look around at what you have accumulated and feel an unexpected emptiness. You bought the car. You have the nice watch. You live in the neighborhood you always wanted. And yet, something is missing. You feel hollow, like you have been running toward a finish line that keeps moving, like the goalposts of success shift every time you get close. This is the feeling of using money as a scorecard, of treating wealth as a measure of your worth rather than a tool for your freedom. The poor mindset, even when it achieves financial success, often makes this mistake. It accumulates wealth to prove something to others, to silence its own doubts, to signal its value to a world it believes is judging it. The rich mindset, on the other hand, uses money as a tool. It sees wealth not as a reflection of identity, but as a resource for expansion, a means to create more meaning, more freedom, and more impact. This distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. Let us examine the scorecard mentality first. This is the belief that your net worth is a measure of your worth as a person. It is the voice that says, "If I have more money, I will be more valuable," or, "If I am less wealthy than my peers, I am less than them." This belief is pervasive in a culture that equates success with wealth, and wealth with character. It is reinforced by social media, by advertising, by the way we talk about successful people, and it is a trap. When you use money as a scorecard, you are always comparing, always measuring, always coming up short. There is always someone richer, someone more successful, someone who has more of the things you think you want. The comparison is endless, and it leaves you feeling empty, anxious, and driven by a need for external validation that can never be satisfied. Consider a scene that might feel familiar. You attend a gathering with friends or colleagues. Someone mentions a recent purchase, a vacation, a promotion. You feel a twinge of envy. You begin to measure your own life against theirs, to calculate who is ahead and who is behind. You might even feel the urge to mention your own accomplishments, to restore the balance, to prove that you are doing well too. This is the scorecard mentality at work. It is the belief that money is a contest, and that your position in the contest determines your value. The rich mindset does not engage in this contest. It does not see wealth as a competition. It sees wealth as a personal resource, a tool for achieving its own goals, regardless of where anyone else stands. This freedom from comparison is one of the most liberating aspects of the rich mindset, and it is one of the hardest to achieve because the scorecard mentality is so deeply ingrained in our culture. Let us look at a specific purchase through the lens of these two mindsets. Imagine you are considering buying a new car. The scorecard mentality asks, what will people think of this car? Will it impress them? Will it signal that I have made it? It chooses the car based on status, on how it will be perceived by others. The tool mentality asks a different set of questions. Does this car serve my needs? Is it reliable? Is it a good value for the money? Will it help me do the things I want to do? It chooses the car based on function, on how it supports the life it wants to live. The price might be the same. The car might even be the same car. But the relationship to the purchase is completely different. One reinforces a cycle of external validation. The other supports a life of purposeful intention. This difference plays out in countless decisions. The scorecard mentality buys the bigger house, not because it needs the space, but because it wants to signal success. It buys the designer clothes, not because they are better quality, but because they carry a label. It upgrades its phone every year, not because the old one no longer works, but because it wants to be seen with the latest model. Each of these purchases is driven by a desire for validation, and each one reinforces the belief that worth is earned through spending. The tool mentality, by contrast, buys what it needs. It invests in quality, where quality matters. It spends on experiences that create memories, on education that builds skills, on relationships that deepen connection. It does not spend to impress. It spends to live, and this distinction, repeated over a lifetime, is the difference between accumulating things and building a life. There is a cost to the scorecard mentality that is rarely discussed. It is not just the financial cost, though that is significant. It is the emotional cost, the constant comparison, the endless striving, the fear of being judged inadequate. These emotions are exhausting. They drain your energy, distract you from what truly matters, and leave you feeling empty even when you achieve your goals. The rich mindset is free from this burden. It does not need to prove anything to anyone. It is secure in its own value, independent of its bank balance. This security is not something you can buy. It is something you cultivate by shifting your focus from external validation to internal purpose, from what others think to what you actually want. Let us talk about how this shift happens. It begins with a question: why do I want this? When you feel the urge to buy something, to pursue a certain goal, to measure yourself against someone else, ask yourself why. Is it because this thing genuinely serves your life? Or is it because you want to be seen a certain way? This question is simple, but it is powerful. It cuts through the noise of social expectation and forces you to examine your own motivations. If the answer is that you want to impress someone, you can pause and reflect. Do you actually care about that person's opinion? Does their approval genuinely matter to your happiness? Often, the answer is no. You are chasing validation from people who are not even thinking about you. They are too busy chasing validation from others. This realization is freeing. It allows you to let go of the need to impress and focus on what actually matters to you. Another important step is to redefine success on your own terms. The scorecard mentality defines success as having more than others. This is a moving target that can never be hit. The rich mindset defines success as living in alignment with your values, achieving your own goals, and using your resources to create the life you want. This is a fixed target. It is defined by you, not by anyone else. When you define success this way, you stop comparing. You stop measuring yourself against the achievements of others, because their achievements are not relevant to your path. Your path is your own, and your success is measured by your progress on that path, not by how you stack up against anyone else. Consider the implications of this shift for your financial decisions. When you stop using money as a scorecard, you become free to spend it on things that genuinely matter to you. You can invest in your health, your education, your relationships, your passions. You can support causes you believe in. You can help others without worrying about what it says about you. You can take risks that might not pay off because the learning is worth it regardless. Your money becomes a tool for your life, not a measure of your life. And this transformation makes everything easier. It removes the anxiety from spending. It removes the guilt from saving. It removes the pressure from earning. You are no longer in a race. You are simply building a life that reflects who you are and what you value. Let us address a common fear. Some people worry that if they stop using money as a scorecard, they will lose their motivation. They fear that without the drive to impress others, they will become complacent. This is a valid concern, but it is based on a misunderstanding of motivation. External validation is not a sustainable motivator. It burns out quickly. It leaves you chasing the next achievement, the next purchase, the next milestone, never feeling satisfied. Internal motivation, by contrast, is sustainable. When you are driven by a sense of purpose, by a desire to grow, by a commitment to your own values, you do not burn out. You do not lose motivation. You become more focused, more resilient, and more capable of sustained effort. The shift from external to internal motivation does not reduce your drive. It transforms it into something deeper and more lasting. Let us look at a practical example of how this plays out. Imagine you are considering a career move. The scorecard mentality asks, will this impress people? Will it come with a title that signals success? The rich mindset asks, does this align with my values? Does it offer growth? Does it support the life I want to build? The first question leads to choices that look good on paper, but may not satisfy you. The second leads to choices that are aligned with your authentic self, choices that build a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling. The first question leads to a life of appearances. The second leads to a life of substance. And substance, over time, creates its own form of success, one that does not depend on anyone else's approval. There is also a social dimension to this shift. When you stop using money as a scorecard, you become more generous. You stop seeing others as competitors and start seeing them as fellow travelers. You are happy for their success because it does not diminish your own. You can celebrate their wins genuinely, without the bitter taste of envy. This generosity of spirit attracts people to you. It builds trust. It creates community. And community, in turn, creates opportunity. The rich mindset understands this. It knows that wealth is not a zero-sum game. That one person's success does not come at the expense of another. This understanding is not just philosophical. It is practical. It opens doors that the scorecard mentality keeps closed. Let us return to the scene at the gathering. You are sitting with friends, and someone mentions a recent success. The scorecard mentality feels the familiar pang of envy. The rich mindset feels a quiet joy. It knows that their success is not a reflection of your failure. It knows that their achievement does not change your worth. It can simply celebrate with them, share in their happiness, and move on. This is freedom. Freedom from comparison. Freedom from the need to prove yourself. Freedom to be present with the people you care about, without the constant background hum of competition. This freedom is not something you can buy. It is something you choose, and it is one of the greatest gifts of the rich mindset. As you move forward, you will face moments where the scorecard mentality tries to reassert itself. You will see a friend's new house and feel a flicker of inadequacy. You will scroll through social media and feel the pull of comparison. You will consider a purchase and wonder what it will signal about you. In these moments, you have a choice. You can stay in the old pattern, chasing validation that never satisfies. Or you can pause, reflect, and choose a different path. You can remind yourself that money is a tool, not a scorecard. You can ask yourself what truly serves your life, and you can act on that answer, knowing that you are building a life of substance, not a life of appearances. The next chapter will explore the daily habits that separate the rich mindset from the poor mindset. The small, consistent actions that compound over time into massive differences in wealth and well-being. Chapter 9. The Habits That Separate. There is a truth about wealth that is often overlooked in the pursuit of grand strategies and life-changing decisions. The truth is this: wealth is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in the quiet, unremarkable habits of daily life. The small decisions you make every morning, every afternoon, every evening, compound over time into the life you eventually live. The difference between the rich mindset And the poor mindset is not usually a single bold move. It is the accumulation of thousands of tiny choices, each one seemingly insignificant on its own, but together creating a chasm between those who build wealth and those who do not. These habits are the architecture of your financial life, and they are the most practical and powerful lever you have for changing your future. Let us begin with the habit of awareness. The poor mindset often avoids looking at its finances. It checks the bank account sparingly, pays bills with dread, and avoids thinking about money altogether. This avoidance is a habit, and it is a costly one. When you do not look at your finances, you cannot manage them. You cannot see where your money is going. You cannot catch small leaks before they become floods. The rich mindset, by contrast, has a habit of regular financial awareness. It checks accounts weekly, reviews spending patterns monthly, and sets aside time for financial planning. This is not about obsessing over every penny. It is about staying informed, staying conscious, and staying in control. The habit of awareness is the foundation of every other financial habit, because you cannot change what you do not see. Consider the practical difference this makes. Imagine two people with the same income. One checks their accounts daily, tracks their spending, and reviews their budget each month. The other checks their accounts occasionally, pays bills when they arrive, and has no clear picture of where their money goes. Over a year, the first person will catch small inefficiencies, adjust their spending, and save more. The second person will continue on autopilot, losing money to subscriptions they forgot about, fees they did not notice, and spending patterns that do not serve them. The difference is not income. The difference is the habit of awareness. This is a habit that anyone can develop, and it is one of the most powerful habits you can build. Another essential habit is the habit of learning. The poor mindset often stops learning after formal education ends. It assumes that financial knowledge is either innate or unnecessary. The rich mindset, by contrast, has a habit of continuous learning. It reads books, listens to podcasts, takes courses, and seeks out mentors. It understands that the world of finance is constantly changing, that new opportunities arise, and that staying informed is essential for staying ahead. This habit of learning does not require a lot of time. Even 15 minutes a day spent on something that expands your financial knowledge can compound into a significant advantage over time. The person who reads one book a month on personal finance will, in a year, have read 12 books. In a decade, they will have read 120 books. That is a level of knowledge that transforms lives. This is the power of the learning habit. It is not about becoming an expert overnight. It is about building knowledge incrementally, layer by layer, until you have a solid foundation of financial literacy. And that foundation, built over time, becomes the platform for your wealth. The habit of discipline is another critical distinction between the two mindsets. The poor mindset often gives in to impulse. It buys what it wants when it wants it, regardless of the long-term consequences. It prioritizes immediate gratification over future security. The rich mindset has cultivated the habit of discipline. It delays gratification. It saves before it spends. It plans for the future and sticks to its plans, even when it is uncomfortable. This discipline is not about deprivation. It is about intention. It is about choosing what matters most and letting go of what does not. The disciplined person does not feel deprived. They feel empowered because they are in control of their choices. The habit of planning is also essential. The poor mindset lives in the moment. It does not plan for the future because the future feels uncertain and distant. The rich mindset plans. It sets financial goals. It creates budgets. It maps out the steps it needs to take to achieve its objectives. This planning habit is not about controlling every detail of your life. It is about creating a direction. It is about knowing where you want to go and taking intentional steps in that direction. Without planning, you drift. With planning, you navigate. And the person who plans is far more likely to achieve their goals than the person who simply hopes. The habit of generosity is another marker of the rich mindset. The poor mindset often holds tight to its resources, afraid that giving will leave it with less. The rich mindset understands that generosity is not a cost, but an investment. It gives time, knowledge, and money freely, knowing that this generosity builds connections, trust, and goodwill. It knows that the world tends to give back to those who give. This is not about expecting returns. It is about recognizing that generosity is a natural expression of abundance, and that abundance attracts more abundance. The habit of generosity is one of the most counterintuitive but powerful habits you can cultivate because it shifts your relationship with money from fear to flow. Consider a small act of generosity. You know someone who is struggling with a financial challenge. You offer your advice, your time, or even a small amount of money to help them. This act does not diminish you. It expands you. It builds a relationship. It creates a memory. It reinforces your own sense of abundance. And, over time, these small acts of generosity compound into a network of trust and reciprocity that supports your own financial well-being. The poor mindset does not see this. It sees only the money leaving. The rich mindset sees the flow, the connection, the long-term value of giving. This is not about being naive. It is about being strategic in a deeper way. The habit of self-compassion is also essential. The poor mindset often beats itself up for mistakes. It holds on to shame and guilt, using past failures as evidence of inadequacy. The rich mindset learns from mistakes and moves on. It does not waste energy on self-blame. It acknowledges the error, extracts the lesson, and applies that lesson to the future. This habit of self-compassion is crucial because financial growth is a journey with inevitable setbacks. If you cannot forgive yourself for your mistakes, you will be paralyzed by fear of making more. You will play it safe, avoid risk, and stay small. The rich mindset, by contrast, is kind to itself. It treats its own mistakes as learning opportunities, not as verdicts on its worth. Let us look at how this plays out. You made a bad investment. You lost money. The poor mindset spirals into self-criticism. I am so stupid. I always make bad decisions. I will never be good with money. These thoughts are not helpful. They do not teach you anything. They just keep you stuck. The rich mindset, on the other hand, examines the investment. What went wrong? What could have been done differently? What will you do next time? This is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about approaching mistakes with curiosity rather than judgment. And this approach is far more effective for learning and growth. The habit of patience is another critical distinction. The poor mindset wants results now. It wants to see immediate returns on its efforts. When it does not, it gives up. The rich mindset understands that wealth is built over time. It is patient. It trusts the process. It knows that compound growth is a slow, steady march, not a sudden leap. This patience is not passive. It is active. It is the patience of the farmer who plants seeds, waters them daily, and waits for the harvest. It is the patience of the investor who adds to their portfolio month after month, knowing that the real payoff comes years down the road. The rich mindset does not need instant gratification. It is motivated by a vision of the future, and that vision sustains it through the slow, steady work of building. Finally, there is the habit of self-reflection. The poor mindset rarely pauses to examine its own behavior. It moves through life on autopilot, repeating the same patterns without questioning them. The rich mindset regularly reflects on its progress, its decisions, and its mindset. It asks itself questions. Am I on track? What could I be doing better? What have I learned recently? What do I need to change? This self-reflection is the engine of growth. It allows the rich mindset to course correct, to learn from experience, and to continually evolve. Without self-reflection, you are stuck in the past. With it, you are constantly growing, constantly improving, constantly moving toward your goals. As you build these habits, you will notice a transformation. The habits themselves are simple, but their cumulative effect is profound. Each small act of awareness, learning, discipline, planning, generosity, self-compassion, patience, and self-reflection builds on the others. They reinforce each other. They create a virtuous cycle that accelerates your growth. And over time, they become automatic. You no longer have to consciously choose them. They have become part of who you are. This is the power of habit. It is the power of turning positive actions into second nature. And it is the power that separates the rich mindset from the poor mindset, not just in money, but in every dimension of life. The next chapter will bring everything together, showing you that the choice between the rich mindset and the poor mindset is not a one-time decision, but a daily practice, something you choose fresh every morning. Chapter 10. The choice you make every morning. You have traveled a long road through this book. You have seen the invisible driver that has been running your financial life. You have felt the weight of the scarcity trap and looked through the lens of abundance. You have traced the story you inherited and begun the work of rewriting it. You have learned to navigate risk, to value your time, and to use money as a tool rather than a scorecard. You have built the habits that separate the rich mindset from the poor mindset. Now, at the end of this journey, you arrive at the simplest and most profound truth of all. The difference between the rich mindset and the poor mindset is not something you are born with. It is not something you acquire once and keep forever. It is a choice. A choice you make fresh every single morning, with every decision you face, with every moment of uncertainty or opportunity. The mindset that built your past does not have to be the mindset that builds your future. You can choose differently. Starting now, starting today, starting with the next thought that enters your mind about money. Let us sit with this for a moment. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. The story you inherited, the habits you formed, the fears that held you back, they were all real. They all shaped you, but they do not define you. You are not a victim of your past. You are the author of your future. Every day, you wake up and you decide. You decide whether to see scarcity or abundance. You decide whether to play it safe or take a calculated risk. You decide whether to invest in yourself or stay the same. You decide whether to treat money as a scorecard or a tool. These decisions, made moment by moment, day by day, create the life you eventually live. The choice is never a one-time event. It is a practice. It is a muscle you build through repetition. And, like any muscle, it grows stronger the more you use it. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. The alarm goes off. You open your eyes. Before you even get out of bed, you have a choice. You can let the old story take the wheel. The story that says you are not enough, that you cannot succeed, that wealth is for other people. Or you can consciously choose a different story. You can say to yourself, "Today I choose abundance. Today I choose growth. Today I act from a place of strength, not fear." This is not just a positive affirmation. It is a declaration of intention. It is a way of setting your mind for the day ahead, of priming your brain to look for opportunities instead of obstacles. The rich mindset does not wait for circumstances to change. It changes its own internal circumstances, its own lens, its own story. And that internal change is what creates external change. Let us think about what this choice looks like in practical terms throughout the day. You sit down to check your email. There is a message about a training course, a networking event, or a business opportunity. The old story says, "That is too expensive," or "I am too busy," or "That is not for someone like me." The new story says, "This might be an investment in my future," or "I can make time for what matters," or "I am exactly the kind of person who seizes opportunities like this." The facts have not changed. The email is the same. The choice is about which story you apply to it. And the choice you make in that moment determines whether you move forward or stay still. Later in the day, you receive a compliment or an acknowledgement of your work. The old story might dismiss it, or feel uncomfortable, or think that it was not deserved. The new story says, "I earned that. I am valuable. I am building something meaningful." This is not arrogance. This is self-respect. It is the habit of accepting your worth and letting it fuel your confidence. Confidence, in turn, leads to bolder decisions, bigger risks, and greater rewards. The choice to accept and believe in your own value is a financial decision because your financial life is shaped by how much you believe you deserve. You have a conversation with a colleague about a new project or a potential collaboration. The old story sees competition. It worries about being outshone or left behind. The new story sees connection. It wonders what you can learn from this person, how you can support each other, what you can build together. The choice of perspective changes the entire dynamic of the interaction. It transforms a potential rival into a potential ally. It opens doors that competition closes, and those doors lead to opportunities that wealthier mindsets tend to find because they are looking for them. The choice you make every morning is not just about your attitude. It is about your actions. You can choose to take one small step toward your financial goals every day. It does not have to be huge. It can be sending a networking email or practicing a new skill. The consistency of these small steps is what builds momentum. Each step reinforces the new story. Each step proves to yourself that you are capable of change. Each step moves you further away from the old mindset and closer to the new one. The rich mindset is built not in grand gestures, but in these daily acts of intention. There will be days when the choice is hard. There will be days when the old story feels louder than the new one. When fear grips you, when doubt creeps in, when you want to give up. This is normal. This is part of the process. The rich mindset does not mean you never feel fear. It means you do not let fear make your decisions. It means you feel the fear and act anyway. It means you acknowledge the doubt and choose to move forward in spite of it. The habit of acting despite fear is one of the most powerful habits you can develop, because it is the habit that separates those who build wealth from those who only dream about it. Let us look at a specific moment where this choice is critical. You are facing a major financial decision. It could be a career change, a significant investment, a business venture, or a large purchase. The fear is intense. Your stomach is in knots. Your mind races with all the things that could go wrong. The old story is screaming at you to stay put, to play it safe, to not risk what you have. The new story is quieter, calmer. It reminds you of your values. It reminds you of your goals. It reminds you of your capability. The choice in this moment is not about eliminating the fear. It is about deciding which voice you will listen to. Will you let fear keep you small, or will you let courage move you forward? The answer to that question is the answer to your financial future. There is a beautiful simplicity in this. You do not need to be a financial genius. You do not need to be born into wealth. You do not need to get lucky. You just need to make a choice every day to choose abundance over scarcity, to choose growth over safety, to choose action over avoidance, to choose the new story over the old one. These choices, repeated over time, accumulate into a life that is radically different from the life you would have lived if you had never made them. The choice is not complicated. It is just difficult. It requires courage. It requires persistence. It requires a willingness to be uncomfortable. But it is always there, waiting for you, every morning, every moment. Let us also recognize that this choice is not something you make alone. You are part of a larger system of relationships, culture, and community. The choices you make about money affect the people you love. They affect the opportunities you can create for your family. They affect the legacy you leave behind. When you choose abundance, you are not just choosing for yourself. You are choosing for everyone who depends on you and everyone who looks up to you. This is a profound responsibility, and it is a source of deep motivation. The poor mindset often isolates people, makes them feel alone in their struggle. The rich mindset recognizes that wealth is not just for the individual. It is for the community, the family, the future. When you choose to build wealth, you are choosing to create a life of generosity, possibility, and impact. Now, at the end of this book, you are standing at a crossroads. The old path is familiar. It is comfortable even if it is painful. It is the path of limitation, fear, and scarcity. The new path is less familiar. It is UNCERTAIN. It requires courage. It asks you to be different, but it leads somewhere different. It leads to a life of freedom, of growth, of abundance. The choice is yours. No one else can make it for you. No one else can walk the path for you. The decision is entirely, absolutely, and beautifully yours. Take a breath. Let the weight of this sink in. You have the power to choose, not because you are special or different from anyone else, because you are human, and that is what humans can do. We can choose. We can change. We can grow. We can become someone new, someone we never thought we could be. The rich mindset is not a destination. It is a direction. It is the direction of growth, openness, and possibility. And you can choose that direction today, tomorrow, and every day after that. The work is never finished. There will always be more to learn, more to do, more to become. That is not a burden. That is the joy of being alive. It is the joy of growth, of expansion, of becoming more fully yourself. The rich mindset embraces that joy. It does not fear the unknown. It welcomes it. It does not cling to the past. It learns from it and moves on. It does not measure itself against others. It measures itself against its own potential. And it moves day by day, step by step, toward the life it wants to live. You have already begun. You have listened to this book. You have reflected on its ideas. You have seen yourself in its stories. You have felt the shift, however small, in how you think about money. That shift is real. It is the beginning of something new. The next step is to carry it forward, to practice it, to let it guide your decisions. The next step is to choose, every morning, the mindset that builds the life you deserve. The rich mindset is not about what you have. It is about who you become. It is about the courage to believe in your own potential, the discipline to act on that belief, and the patience to let time do its work. It is about seeing money as a tool for freedom, not a measure of worth. It is about knowing that you are enough, that you are capable, and that you have the power to create the life you want. It is about choice, and that choice, the choice you make every morning, is the most powerful thing in the world. Thank you for taking this journey. You have done the hardest part. You have shown up. You have been willing to look at yourself honestly. You have been willing to change. The rest is just practice. Day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment, you are on your way. The closing. You have traveled the full arc of this journey. From the invisible driver that shaped your earliest beliefs about money to the daily choice that will shape everything that comes next. You have seen the scarcity trap and looked through the abundance lens. You have traced the story you inherited and begun the work of rewriting it. You have learned to navigate risk, to value your time, and to use money as a tool rather than a scorecard. You have built the habits that separate the rich mindset from the poor one. And now, at the end of all this, one truth remains above all others. The difference between the rich mindset and the poor mindset is not about what you have. It is about who you believe yourself to be. It is about the story you tell yourself about your own potential, your own worth, and your own capacity to grow. The shift you have begun in these pages is not a one-time transformation. It is a practice, a daily discipline of choosing the story that serves you over the story that confines you. There will be days when the old story feels louder, when fear grips you, when doubt whispers that nothing has changed. On those days, remember this: you are not the voice of doubt. You are the one who hears it. You are not the fear. You are the one who feels it and chooses action anyway. You are not the old story. You are the one who can write a new one. This is the deep truth that changes everything. You are not your past. You are not your inheritance. You are not your habits. You are the author of your future. And every morning, you pick up the pen. The world will not hand you wealth. It will not hand you freedom. It will not hand you peace. But it will give you something more important. It will give you the opportunity to choose. Every day, every moment, every decision is a chance to choose the story that expands your life instead of shrinking it. The choice is not always easy. It is not always comfortable. But it is always there, waiting for you, patient and persistent. And every time you make it, you become a little more yourself, a little more free, a little more the person you were meant to be. Take a breath now. Let this settle. You are not the same person who started this book. You have seen things about yourself that you had never seen before. You have named fears that had been unnamed. You have begun the work of building a new relationship with money, one based on freedom, growth, and abundance. That is not nothing. That is everything. It is the foundation of a new life. The rest is just practice. Day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment, you have already begun. You are already on your way. And the path ahead, however uncertain, is yours to walk. Go now and make the choice. Every morning, every moment, every decision. Choose abundance. Choose growth. Choose yourself. You are worth it. Thank you for listening.